Good evening. My name is Summer, and I am an alcoholic and an addict. Welcome to our Friday night book study with Big Book Compendium. The spiritual life is not a theory. All right. So my name is Summer, and most of y'all know us and know me by now. But I have a special guest here tonight. Her name is Kathy E. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your home group or what have you.
Thanks, Summer. It's an honor to be here and to be asked. My name is Kathy McKeag. I'm an alcoholic. My home group is Belfast Recover Group, and my sobriety date is March 13th, 2016.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. All right. So we're just going to we're going to get right into page 23. And we're at the top where it says these observations, the first big paragraph, I guess, or full paragraph. All right. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. So what's the cycle? That's the cycle is the obsession of our mind, like what goes on in our mind. And I mean, the allergy sets it off, but I'm thinking that the terrible cycle in motion is the whole thing together. It's like a big thing. Someone, I think it was Kevin O, he put up something about it, and it's the allergy, and then we break out in craving, and then we need it again. It's just like that. And so terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. That's so true. Do you have anything to say on that, Kathy?
Well, thank you. So much to say. These observations would be academic and pointless. Like it would just be a theory, and what they're talking about, I believe, is at the bottom of page 22, that once we take any alcohol into our system, something happens both in the bodily and mentally sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop, for us to stop. They would just be words for us if that wasn't the truth. And this terrible cycle, I love how you brought that up. And I often think of the doctor's opinion on XXIX. It talks about after it comes to desire again, so many do, which is the thought, the obsession, and the phenomenal craving develops. They pass through the well-known stage of a spree, immersing remorseful with firm resolution not to drink again. And it's repeated over and over. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. So, my experience to me shows that those observations they made are not pointless. They're pretty much on point. But then there's the greater problem, like you mentioned, like therefore the main problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind rather than his body. And like I just love this page. And the rest of these pages that talk about the mental powerlessness up to page pretty much 45, that is the problem, because I can't stop myself from picking up a drink. So, the main problem is in my mind. The main problem is in my mind rather than my body, because like the doctor talks about entire abstinence, but then, that's one way for taking care of the body. But again, the main problem is in the mind. So it's a pretty big problem. That's all I have on that.
Thank you. Beautiful. All right, we'll go back to the book. And if you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. I mean, I relate to this so much. It's like, no matter how much trouble I got in, no matter how bad it was, or me waking up with the terror, bewilderment, all that, like just like that horrible stomach ache that I would get from anxiety, like that wasn't enough. And it's like it doesn't make sense to other people, and looking at the havoc that's going around in an alcoholic and an addict, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to my parents. It doesn't make sense to pretty much everyone I'm around. My kids don't understand. Just have one drink. But it's when it's not happening with us, or with me, I should say, everyone else around me just doesn't. I don't find people that understand, but I have a higher power that does, and that's what keeps me going. And I do like how it says here, if you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis, excuses, right? But he doesn't even know why. And if he was hooked up to a lie detector test, I think that he would pass because he really doesn't understand. I think when we're talking about whoever this person here in the book, when he goes out and he goes out on a Friday night or whatever, and he takes a drink and he says, I'm just gonna have one. And then he thinks he's changed his mind when he's drinking like 4 and 5 and 8 and whatever. He's like, oh, Pat, I changed my mind. I'm just gonna go for 5 tonight. And then it never ends. So if they were to ask him why he started, he might not even know, or he might have a million jillion like excuses. So what about you, Kathy? Do you have anything to say?
Yeah. I think back to when this was happening to me in the doctor's opinion on XV triple I, it talks about how this sensation is so elusive, but we admit it's injurious, but after a time I can't differentiate the truth from the false. So excuses to me are actually, what I believe, they're actually the truth. But in a second person or a third person, for example, like you talked about our parents, or and that was the same in my case. Like I would say something and I really believed it because I can't differentiate the truth from the false. My alcoholic life is the only normal one. And in the light of the havoc, in the light of reality that my alcoholic drinking career creates, like to my sister, to my mother, it does not make sense,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all I have for
Okay.
that.
All right. They sound, I hope I was here. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Kathy?
Oh, I love this. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's like. It's like someone getting a hammer and beating themselves on the head. I would look at that man and go like, there's something not right about him. But that's exactly what I'm doing with alcohol every time, with unbeknownst to myself, without my permission, pick it up again. That's exactly the way a normal layman, non-drinker, just a normal person would think of me, that there's something not right. She's like this person that keeps hitting herself over the head with a hammer, having a headache. And again, anytime it was brought to my attention how, what you're doing, why do you do it? I would become irritated and I wouldn't talk about it. I ran out of excuses, but I usually wouldn't talk about it. There was a defense put up, a wall.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. We're still on 23 at the third paragraph. Or wait, second normal paragraph. All right. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect that they are down for the count. Yeah, I think up until not too long ago, I guess like a reservation, I constantly think, well, maybe I can beat this. I've done so much things on self. Maybe I can be like, not be like all the others, and like I can just do it on my own self-will. And I mean, yeah, I might be able to do it on my own for a little bit, but then it comes crashing in, right? And like you can't be on self-will for much long. I mean, not I don't know what the exact amounts are for you guys, but I can't be on self-will much more than a day now. Like if I start taking things and taking control and doing like acting out of my character defects, it doesn't work for me anymore. Like I feel it in my body. Like I don't want to do that. So And like, we're not supposed to ever go to bed angry. And that's what I used to do, that a lot, all the time. What about you, Kathy?
Yeah, thank you so much. This paragraph is so apparent to me. I told the truth once to my mother, and it was silence. After a question, she asked me, "Why do you keep doing it? Why do you keep going back for more?" And there was this, long pause in the conversation where, in that moment, I had no answer for her. And that to me was exactly like the book says. I had no idea, even though deep down, even though it didn't come out of my mouth, I had no idea. But she caught me in that moment because I really had no idea why I keep coming back. Because my drinking career is one of, periods of time of sobriety, or just not drinking, or just going to AA meetings and then going right back, because the main problem in my mind and the spiritual malady talks about, the malady wasn't being treated. So I returned to alcohol,
Mhm.
and I did not know what I suffered from. So, you know, excuse me, I had no idea. And perhaps I did have excuses, but I usually didn't need. I was the kind of drinker where it came to mind and off I went. It was just, if there was something in the way, whether it was a job or a situation I was in, I couldn't get out. I held my breath until I got to where I needed to go to get to drink. Um, and yeah, I was totally baffled, because I thought I had did everything I needed to do. Um, Go to meetings, keep on guard, X, Y, and Z. Um, but once this malady has a real hold, they are baffled lots. Like, there's something just much more here going on with me than just the obsession of the mind. And I did not know it when it was happening, but this obsession that somehow, someday, I will beat the game. And every time I got up with a fresh or a high resolve to do it differently after I'd pick up and come to, there's always that high resolve that I would beat the game. This is how. And it looked like, I'm going to drink twice a month, or it looked like I'm going to find, the partner and settle down, and I'm going to just, drink 2 glasses of wine in the evening. But I knew when I was long enough, I beg your pardon, when I was still enough for long enough, that I was down for the count. So that's all I have on that. Thanks, Summer.
Thank you. So, um, the obsession is introduced here, and I just wanted to read it. Not introduced, but read it out of our the dictionary, that's the AA dictionary, not my 1939 one. So it says obsession is excessive and irrational mental attachment, a persistent and disturbing preoccupation with an often unreasonable idea or feeling, compelling motivation, fixation, compulsion. Sound familiar? It does to me too. Yeah. And then also, if you don't have to turn there, but page 30, and more about alcoholism, kind of, reiterates what we just read. And I'll just read part of it, where it says, the idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. So that just reminded me of what we just read. So, do you want to read, Kathy?
Sure. Um, how true this is if you realize, in a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal, but everybody hopefully awaits a day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power will. Um, Yikes. And in hindsight, that was so true. That you just read that line, and more about alcoholism, so powerful. About trying to control and enjoy my drinking in the one line. Like, every time I was trying to control it, it was torture. And there was very few times I did that. And every time I tried to, most of the time I was trying to enjoy it, I was totally out of control. But like the book just says in regards to this paragraph, um, that they often spec their down for the count, that that day that I can beat the game is not going to come. And I didn't realize that until I realized it. Of course, my mother, and I had fair weather friends, to be honest. I didn't have friends from childhood where I went drinking with. I had friends where I met them at one place and I drank with them, and then they were there for a while and I moved on to the next set of friends. So I don't really know if you would say I had friends. But my family said there was, there's, you can't handle your drink. Why do you keep doing that again? And quite frankly, my sister had really vanished in my life, and actually told me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. But my mother was waiting that day when I would get it together. You need something different, outside help. Get yourself looked about, Kathy, to rise myself from this lethargy, assert my will, some other way to get myself together, my life together. Yeah. Back to you, Summer.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to keep moving on. We're still on 23 at the last paragraph. The tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. So, yeah, once we pass through, the line, the invisible line, or pass through to that part of our life where drinking has completely, like, we're completely out of control and completely out of power. I mean, lack of power is our dilemma, and I think that's the only thing that can actually help us if we've passed over, if we've gone over on the line, if, like, we've gone to the point of no return. I mean, if any of you remember, like, with drinking, it was, for me in my last days, it was like I needed a drink because I was shaking so bad, but then when I had a drink, I threw it up, and it was like nothing worked, nothing was working, and it was like it wouldn't give me any relief. Like, all those years that I was using alcohol and drugs for the solution, that stopped, and it was like, ugh, it was so hard. So do you have anything to say on this one, Kathy? This paragraph?
Yeah, you know, this truth that I can assert my willpower won't come if I'm a real alcoholic. And I know you guys probably covered it last week. I wasn't here, but it talks about on page 21, getting into the detailed discussion about the description of the drinkers. It talks about, well, what about this real alcoholic? And you mentioned crossing the line, that we may start out as a moderate, we may, or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But the most important thing about being this real alcoholic that I am is that at some time in my drinking career, I begin to lose all control of my liquor once I start to drink. That's what qualifies me, to be a real alcoholic. And that, excuse me, that day won't arrive if I'm a real alcoholic and I have found myself in these pages. Because I've lost control, it's gone. And I think of that line more about alcoholism. We are men who have lost our legs, we never grow new ones. Like, I have to picture that when I'm here. It's gone. And I didn't know that because I grappled and I grasped for control because I didn't understand the physical partner, never mind, and the mental part of the problem that I suffer from. And I passed into that stage where, now after a lot of frothy emotional appeal, some consequences and situations, when I really had the desire to stop, which really was my desire to get back to an AA room and get serious about this, I couldn't make it back. I was drinking every single day, and every single day going, I just want to stop. I will give anything. And that wasn't enough. That desire wasn't enough, and it probably was there really before I had that moment of wanting to stop. So that's all I have on that.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful. I'm going to back up a little bit. The paragraph that says, how true this is, few realize. In a vague way, there's families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal, but everyone everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. Well, I had just read this other line. It's on page 99, and I feel like it really relates. And it's a really good line by itself too. But it says, remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. So yeah, I'm gonna keep reading the squiggly lines. 24. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. I didn't like that. When I first learned that, it took me a very long time to understand like that I wasn't responsible for the first drink. I understood how the other ones, but it was really hard to understand the first drink. You know, it took me a long time. And then these squiggly lines, I know we've talked about it before, but that means they're very pertinent. I mean, they cost more money when he was publishing this or writing it. But honestly, I mean, the when you look back on the squiggly lines ones, they're definitely ones that you want to, study and like look at. Yeah, this one right here. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. I think I'm going to look up obscure. But do you have anything to say, Kathy?
Thanks, Summer. That's brilliant. This is one of my favorite paragraphs. In regards to summing it up, really, with being powerless. But the word fact is something known to be true, like that. I've lost this power of choice and drink. So it's gone, whether I'm sober or drinking, it's gone. It's past tense. There is no ability to have willpower when it comes to saying no to alcohol for me. There's just no ability. This willpower is non-existent. That's what it tells us. We're unable at certain times, and I look at certain times, like it is certain to happen at times, bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. Absolutely 100%. I've had this experience. There was a certain time I had 3 months of sobriety. I was finishing a shift at work. Someone walked into the bar where I worked as a waitress. I said, I don't want to drink. I got on my knees. I walked out and I sat up at the bar and I ordered a drink. Now I prayed, but had I did this work, no, I was going to meetings. I still had an alcoholic mind. I didn't remember what actually happened 3 months before, which was a consequence, which led me to getting sober. I didn't remember that. I did not remember that. I don't have enough power to have that come into my mind to tell me not to pick up a drink, because I'm already insane at this point. So I'm without a defense against the first drink. So in other words, I'm going to drink. No power, no power, no choice. If I have no choice, I have no control because I pick up. So I'll just end on this. Like I think it's important to bust the myths we hear sometimes in the rooms, which are, today I choose not to drink. Like I never understood that, and today I don't choose not to drink, not drink. The problem is being removed, but by a power greater than myself and some actions out of this book. So that's all I have. Thanks, Summer.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Obscure, and you all might already know this, but for some reason I couldn't remember what it was. It says obscured or obscure, not clearly seen or understood, unclear or hidden, made difficult to see or understand, concealed. So for the reasons yet concealed, or any, like we can fill it in with any of those things. All of a sudden I lost my line and I can't see, sorry. Obscure. Okay. Oh, here it is. So hidden, make difficult to see or understood, and concealed. So the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet hidden, concealed, have lost the power of choice in drink. And yeah, every time we say the power of the first drink, I lost the power of the first drink. And also where it says so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but like living today, substance free and not with that, like I struggle with my character defects, and I feel the exact same way that I'm powerless over them. I'm not, I'm powerless over them. And when I do act out in them, sometimes I feel the same thing. Um, like I can't remember it a week later. Like I'm like, what, I did that, or I was mean to the kids they keep all the scores and, write everything down. But I'm just like, I don't know why it goes out of my mind sometimes. But do you have anything better than that to say, Jackie?
No, no. Thanks for sharing yours. Yeah.
You don't have anything to say?
No, no. Just in regards to that paragraph, no, I think what I just said,
Okay. Okay, sorry.
sufficient. No, no, you're grand.
I didn't hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
We are on the second normal paragraph, or on 24. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. You want to comment on that one?
Sure. Let me see what I can do here. Yeah, the consequences that follow. Like I love the way he's so specific, he's so precise with his words, like the almost certain, like there's certain consequences that follow even taking a glass of beer. Don't crowd into our minds to say, don't do that, because I don't have that kind of, I don't have that power. I'm insane at this point when it comes to alcohol, but if they do occur before I pick up that drink, the thoughts, which, then would become the mental obsession, and they're hazy and readily supplanted. Like they're hazy, they're not, there's not enough force there. There's not enough truth to stop me, to deter me. But the point is, they're replaced by this old worn out idea, these old worn out thoughts that, you know what, I'll handle myself like other people this time. Look at the person who can read a book in the place I work at, who can have 3 drinks with impunity. That's what I listen to in my mind. That becomes the obsession of the thought, that old thought, the old threadbare idea wins out. I'll handle myself like other people. And just, I love this analogy about the kind of failure, I mean, the complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps us from putting our hand on a hot stove, like. And I think like that is a clear sign for me of what this is a big problem that centers in our mind. I think of like if a child put their hand on a stove, they were like hot, burning, they're not going to do it again. That's going to be remembered. They won't do it again. But with me, I don't remember that. So anything out of my mind, these old threadbare ideas, these old thoughts are not going to cut it, because they're insane thoughts. So I love his little analogy there. That's all I have.
Yeah, that's great. Threadbare is I didn't know what that meant. He said it's like a worn out old idea. And isn't that part of what we have to smash, our old ideas, and old ideas with this sort of stuff, also with our, our past time, using or drinking. And I guess I always just thought of it in recovery as I have to get rid of my old ideas about God, about, like, that's but it's all over the place in this book. It's everywhere. And, getting rid of our old ideas. Cause I mean, just for instance, like an allergy, I thought an allergy was something that when you break out in it, you have a rash all over your body, or your throat's closing, and like it's just an adverse reaction. So I had to smash that. It took me a while to smash these old ideas and smash the old definitions of the words. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then also, the paragraph that you just read, Kathy, I'm gonna do page 43. I think oh wait, yeah, 43 I wrote there. So yeah, it's more about alcoholism. No one has to turn there, but once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. So that's pretty clear. And I like the way Bill writes as well. He's being pretty clear, and he does use musts quite often. I know some people don't think that, but there's a bunch of musts in here, and especially in the original manuscript. All right. Then also on page 58, I think I'm looking, my big book is so like written all over. 58, where it starts with how it works and talks about getting rid of the old ideas. That's the reference to that. Hold on, the chance I guess it was those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And then I could have sworn there was something about old ideas in here on this page. Well, I guess, at some point, or some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. I know for me, I was entitled, I was spoiled. My parents always rescued me. Like, I was like, no, I'm not doing this thing. Bring me to a rehab. They're easier to stay for a year. But we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Oh, here it is. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go. Absolutely. You guys are so patient with me. Maybe I read the whole page until it's at the end. You could have just chimed in or something, but okay. I'm going back to page 24, and yeah, the alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, "It won't burn me this time, so here's how." Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often has some of us began to drink in the nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth, pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, "For God's sake, how did I ever get started again?" Only to have that thought supplanted by, "Well, I'll stop with the sixth drink," or "What's the use anyhow?" That was always my thing. Like, once it got in my system, I'm like, I'll just start tomorrow. I'll just start over tomorrow, because I wasn't noticing whether I was changing my mind or not. I just went in and drank and drank, and yeah, I wouldn't even have thought maybe I changed my mind. I knew every time that it was going to turn out like that. What about you, Kathy?
Yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
finding that part in how it works as well, and for yours. Yeah, I totally relate to this. It won't burn me this time. And I had a lot of those, like I just shared about, coming to the rooms, having periods without a drink, not doing work. Like, it won't burn me this time. That's the alcoholic insanity. Maybe mine was different, which is, you know what, I'll get back to AA tomorrow. I'll just drink tonight and come back tomorrow. I did that for a long time. Those were my, that's insanity. That's the alcoholic insanity. Or, I don't care, I'll do it anyway. Or, I know what's going to happen. Like, all of that is that alcoholic insanity, just like, it won't burn me this time. So here's how, like I said, I'll drink tonight and I'll go back to AA tomorrow. This is how. And absolutely, like you said, and like, I would get started, and, you know, I keep going. Like, I don't want 2 drinks. I keep going. I feel remorse maybe after 2 or 3, and I go, "Oh, what's the point anyway?" And I just continue on. But, I thought that, I was making that choice, like, when I started, but I wasn't. I didn't have a choice once it was in me because of my body and the phenomenon of craving, which was activated through the allergen on top of the allergy. But then I had this other one, which the book just talked about is, um, or perhaps he doesn't think at all.
Mm,
That was a big one for me. I would wonder how I got off the subway and ended up in the bar with a glass in hand. Like, where was all that time lapse gone? How did I get here? I didn't even think at all. And there I found myself with glass in hand. So I definitely don't have a defense. I have an insane mind. So that's all I have.
thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I enjoy hearing the stories of how we were, and like I know I have a lot of similarities to what you said, Kathy, because it's like I would wake up and be like, where am I? Like, what state am I in? One time I woke up in Puerto Rico and I was like, and I went on a cruise, and I don't, those types of things. It's not even funny at all, or like, but when you're going through it and stuff, it's waking up and not knowing where you are causes some real hardcore anxiety, at least for me. So I'm thankful to not have that anymore, for sure. The alcohol wait When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. We just talked about that. And unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but cannot. Now this hits home for me. There could have been way more, thousands more of convincing demonstrations if they didn't, submit to this. And when that line comes, but for the grace of God, you know, so many want to stop, but they cannot. I can't remember what that one saying is, but by his, or it's about the grace, and someone says, or I would go, there go I. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. David, have you heard of it? You're muted, so I don't know if you have. Okay. I mean, really what it means is like when our brothers and sisters and our family in AA, we don't want to kick them down, or, kick them while they're down. And it's only by God's grace that's not us, if that makes sense. That's not me. It's only by God's grace. And I'm going to think about this all night. I can't remember what the saying is, but I'm sure someone will tell me. Yeah. So when this sort of thinking is fully established, that's back on page 24, like what sort of thinking are they talking about? And fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself behind human aid. So I like how this is starting to come in, and it's saying sort of thinking is fully established. A lot of the pages before were drinking, and like it goes into thinking now. Yeah, and we will, we read that before earlier this evening, but he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, behind that line. And I mean, lack of power again is our problem. So he's behind human aid. Maybe a couple years before that, a family member could have helped. I'm not sure, but that's the reality of where we get if we're real alcoholics. Do you want to read There Is a Solution, Kathy? That there is, or yeah, first paragraph on 25.
Yeah. So there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we've been living it, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, There was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual principles laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence with which we had not even dreamed. So I on a low key, hallelujah. It's took us like seven, six, over 8 pages to get to there is a solution. It's so important that there is a solution. It's singular. It's not a, multiple variety of solutions. It's a solution. And it was actually Steve W. that really helped me with this word solution. If 2 + 2 = 4, what is the solution? Some people might say, well, the answer is i.e. 4, but the solution is the plus in the middle. And like this solution for us is spiritual. It's the spiritual solution. It is not the answer. It is a solution being a means by which I need to do something to solve clearly a problem. So this is what it is. And they're going to tell us is this self-searching, which is step 4, and the leveling of our pride, which is basically a step 1 as well, and step 5, the confession of our shortcomings, which is 5 and 6 as well, and which this process requires for its successful consummation. In other words, for a spiritual awakening, basically, to have our psychic change, to have our brains rewired, we have to do these things. This is the solution, what they've laid out for us. But we saw it worked in others. Yeah, I seen it in other recovered alcoholics. I seen it when my sponsor sat across from me. I often use the line about Abby. Abby was fresh skin and glowing. She was fresh skin and glowing. And all I could do was look at her face and go, oh my God, she has something that I don't. She was a recovered alcoholic. And I come to believe in the hopelessness. And I mean, the hopelessness of drinking's not working for me. It's no longer the solution in my life. And now that I have no alcohol in my system, I'm living in this spiritual malady, these manifestations, which are the bedevilments and the self. And I couldn't understand what was wrong with me. And life is very hopeless and very futile. It's very pointless, meaningless. And that's the way I was living um without a solution, a power in my life or alcohol, basically. And yeah, the problem had been solved in this woman that sat across from me. It was history. The drink problem was solved. And when I was, sat in front of her and she opened this book with me and she turned these pages with me and she showed me what they meant, and we did, she laid it out what was required of me. It was up to me then to pick up that spiritual toolkit, open it up, and to start doing what it told me to do. It wasn't on her, it was on me to pick it up and open that little bag up and to take out these spiritual tools laid at our feet. And yeah, to be rocked into this fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension, I'm sure for me is the here and now, because I was always living in the past or in the future. Could never be right here, right now, as a result of my past and not knowing how to be present or not doing any work to clean it up. And yeah, so that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Okay, we're good on time. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our life today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish these things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. It's like the things that I couldn't do myself that my higher power is helping with today. It's just, I could just go on and on about it, but I think of like I don't know if it's from a book or what, but it's like, being non-perfect and having our imperfections is actually it's strength. It's a partnership with us and God. So in our weakness, our God, or the universe, or the creator of the universe, is made, in our weakness, he's made strong, and we can work together in a pair, like as a partnership. And yeah, I love this line. We have deep and effective spiritual experiences which have what revolutionized. What is a revolution? Completely changed, I think. Completely changed and moved around, and opposite of how it was before. Our whole attitude toward life. Out of everything, I think that that's the one thing that changed for me. Like, I still have some like idiosyncrasies or little things that I do, but like my attitude toward life, towards the people that are around me, and towards my higher power has like done a complete, it's like not even the same. And I never knew how selfish I was, and I never knew those things until I was able to experience learning about it and being here, and then going back, and like I would relapse, and just so what about you, Kathy?
Yeah, thanks for that, Summer. Yeah, again, I love this paragraph, just like every paragraph in this book. But I think of, when Howard says he calls this the A brochure, and by the way, for the recording, it's not called that. It's just called the third paragraph on page 25, or second paragraph, as the case may be. But um this is the first 100's description of their spiritual experience. This is what, we we look at that 12 step, and it talks about having had a spiritual awakening, and the difference in a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening is just really time. But a couple of play on words here. He talks about the great fact, and he talks about the central fact. And on page 17, he begins talking about the tremendous fact. Now, I don't get too hung up on all that stuff. I just kind of think it's kind of cool to include. But he said the great fact is just this, and nothing less, that we've had deep and effective spiritual experience. And I really loved how you talked about revolutionized. And when I was doing the work, my sponsor says, Kathy, revolution is not plain sailing. It is choppy. And I thought, okay, all right, I can get down with that. But what it is, this spiritual experience, or in the appendix, it talks about the spiritual awakening of the educational variety, is that my attitude toward life, toward people, and toward God changes. Those are the three things that change. And I love how this line is wrote. I read it the way I read it, but it talks about the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives. And some people say lives, it doesn't really matter to me, in a way which is indeed miraculous. Like, it is absolutely miraculous. Like, my heart has been blown open. But this power is deep down inside of me. It's innate, and it lives there. And it could accomplish these things for which we could never do by ourselves. Like, first things first here. Like, I couldn't stay sober. That's the first thing it did for me. And then it took care of my living problems. I don't have problems today, right? But the point is that I could never do that by myself. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful paragraph, and revolutionized, transformed, changed, whatever you want to call it. That's what we get when we do this work. So that's all I have, Summer.
Thank you. That was really nice. Another thing on this paragraph, because I think this will be our last one for the night. I don't know if this is true for you guys, but when we read our lives today, is the absolute certainty. Like, I was never certain about anything. Like, I mean, I was always like dual minded, and like, or I just didn't have the I guess my self-esteem was at a different area at that time, and I didn't have like the esteem to like stand up for something that's wrong or right. But here, this is one thing, like for me, that I can have the absolute certainty that, and then we learn in We Agnostics that it's within us, deep within us. And I never understood that either until now, but that he has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. And then he has commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. And I love never, not sometimes. I mean, the time, sometimes that I did it, I eventually burn out, right? Like we burn out. So if you think, Kathy, we can read one more paragraph, it's 8:58.
What do you think? It's up to yourself.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, we'll read one more and then we'll do question and answer. Okay. Do you want to read it?
Sure.
Okay.
You know, I think of this paragraph, and I know there's someone in this meeting that always refers to this paragraph. So I hope I can do it some good, but never as good as the person who really likes this paragraph. You know who you are. If you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of road solution. We are in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human need, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best as we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. Yeah. Very, very heavy, to the point paragraph. Seriously alcoholic as we were, there's no middle of road solution. And like, if we think of the analogy of standing in the middle of the road, sooner or later we're going to get knocked down, period. And I was in the middle of road solution for a very, very long time in the rooms. I got knocked down by alcohol, clearly. It didn't work. But life was becoming impossible. Like, I've just wrote in my book, unmanageable, like unbearable. And that's the way life was. And if I've passed into this region where there is no return through human aid, and there really wasn't, you know, I had exhausted all people, you know, all people and the medical professionals. I mean, I have enough experience to see that there was no return through human aid. Absolutely not. And it tells me I have two alternatives. And like, one is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best as I could, keep on drinking or keep on living dry. Really, really, really that what it is. Not submitting to this, what we're going to read in the next, which is accept spiritual help. Like, I will go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness in, you mentioned like character defects, like that is there with the taking if I don't do this work. And but if I accept spiritual help, here's the cool thing. The other alternative is it's not there, because I've accepted spiritual help. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do the work. So automatically that other one that I had, which was to go on to the bitter end, is knocked out of the park. Right. But if I continue to go on to the bitter end, then the alternative spiritual help is not the alternative. So it's one or the other. And I love when it says, this we did because we honestly want to and we're willing to make the effort. I want help. I want the help on offer here, and I'm willing. Doesn't mean I like it. Nothing got to do about how I feel or what I think about it. But am I willing and am I honest?
Yeah.
Then I'm going toward the light, essentially. So that's all I have on that.
Thank you. That was great. That was great. What real quick, so the last line on page 25, it's when talking about the two different alternatives that we have. I think it's interesting that, listen to, like, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And then it says, and the other is to accept spiritual help. It's like we have this whole big line of like all this stuff, and then or just pick up the tools that God is or that your higher power is trying to give you, or take the the offers that AA people are giving us, or take the ride, or go to the meeting, or whatever. But I mean, I had heard this once, like many, many years ago, that this type of decision is very hard for the alcoholic. Like, do I want to keep going on and blotting out the consciousness of my horrible situation? No, not really. But sometimes I would, because I really didn't want to stop drinking at the time. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I also love where it says things for us which we could never do by ourselves. That just means how much our higher power cares about us. He cares, or she cares for us, and cares about everything that we go through. And like that for me was an old idea that I had to have smashed, because I didn't believe that when I got here. Not that belief, but I thought that he was up like, you summer, you do this. But we all have our different higher powers. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can open it up for questions and answers.